about doing evil ourselves, but about something else. In 26:4, the good man is not only free from vanity, falsehood, but has not even dwelt with been on intimate terms with those who are vain. He has hated them. 5. So in 31:7, he has hated idolaters. In 50:18, God blames a man not for being a thief, but for consenting to a thief. In Dr. Moffat, you are a friend to any thief you see. In 141, 4-6, where all translation appears to be rather wrong, the general sense nevertheless comes through and expresses the same attitude, almost comically. The psalmist of 139 asks, "Don't I hate those who hate thee, Lord? Why I hate them as if they were my enemies." 139, 21, and 22. Now, obviously, all this taken upon oneself to hate those whom one thinks God's enemies, avoiding the society of those one thinks wicked, judging our neighbors, thinking oneself too good for some of them, not in the snobbish way, which is a trivial sin in comparison, but in the deepest meaning of the words, too good is an extremely dangerous, almost a fatal game. It leads straight to Pharisaism, in the sense which our Lord's own teaching has given to that word. It leads not only to the wickedness, but to the absurdity of those who in later times came to be called the uncooked. This I assume from the outset, and I think that even in the Psalms, this evil is already at work. But we must not be pharisaical, even to the Pharisees. It is foolish to read such passages without realizing that a quite genuine problem is involved, and I am not at all confident about the solution. We hear it said again and again that the editor of some newspaper is a radical, that some politician is a liar, that some official person is a tyrannical jack in the office, and even dishonest, that someone has treated his wife abominably, that some celebrity, film star, author, or whatnot leads a most vile and mischievous life. And the general rule in modern society is that no one refuses to meet any of these people and to behave towards them in a friendliest and most cordial manner. People will even go out of their way to meet them. They will not even stop buying the rust-colored paper, thus paying the owner for the lies, the detestable intrusions upon private lives and private tragedy, the blasphemies and the pornography which they profess to condemn. I have said there is a problem here, but there really two. One is social and almost political, and may be asked whether the state of society in which rascality undergoes no social penalty in healthy one, whether we should not be a happier country in certain important people were pharaohs, and as the hangman once was, blackballed at every club, dropped by every acquaintance, and liable to print and of writing crop or fingers across the face if they were ever bold enough to speak to a respectable woman. It leads into a larger question, whether the great evil is our civil life. It's not that the fact that there seems now no medium between hopeless submission and full dress revolution. Rioting has died out, windows of various ministries and newspapers were more often broken, if certain people were more often put under pumps and mightily mud, not stones, pelted in the streets, we should get on a great deal better. It is not wholly desirable that any man should be allowed at once the pleasures of a tyrant or a wolf's head, and also those of an honest agreement among his equal. To this question, I do not know the answer. The dangers of a change in the direction I have outlined are very great. So are the evils of our present tameness. I am concerned here only with the problem that appears in our individual and private lives. How ought we to behave in the presence of very bad people? I will limit this by changing very bad people to very bad people who are powerful, prosperous, and impenitent. If they are outcasts, poor, and miserable, whose wickedness obviously has not paid, then every Christian knows the answer. Christ is speaking to the Samaritan woman at the well. Christ with the woman taken in adultery. Christ dining with publicans is our example. I mean, of course, that his humility, his love, his total indifference to the social discredit and misrepresentation, he might incur are examples for us. Not, heaven knows, that any of us who was not specially qualified to do so by priesthood, age-old acquaintances, or the earnest request of the sinners themselves, could without insolence and presumption assume the least trace of his authority to rebuke and pardon. One has to be very careful lest the desire of patronize and the itch to be a busybody should disguise itself as a vocation to help the fallen, or tend to obscure. My light went off. I'll be right back. Okay, back. Oh, let's see. Priesthood age. Was very careful. The desire of patronize the itch of busybody should disguise itself as a vocation to help the fallen, or tend to obscure our knowledge that we are fallen, perhaps in God's eyes far more so ourselves. But of course there were probably others who equally consorted with publicans and sinners, and whose motives were very unlike those of our Lord. The publicans were the lowest members of what we call the Vichy, or collaborationist movement in Palestine. Men who fleeced their fellow countrymen to get money for the occupying power in return for a fat percentage of the swag. As such, they were like the hangman outside all dissent of social intercourse. But some of them did pretty well financially, and no doubt most of them enjoyed up to a point the protection, the contemptuous favors of the Roman government. One may guess that some consorted with them for very bad reasons, to get pickings, to be on good terms with such dangerous neighbors. Besides, our Lord there would have been among their guest toadies, and those who wanted to be on the bandwagon. People, in fact, like a young man I once knew. He had been a strict socialist at Oxford. Everything ought to be run by the state, private enterprise, and independent profession, where for him the great evil. He then went away and became a schoolmaster. After about 10 years of that, he came to see me. He said his political views had been wholly reversed, and you were heard a fuller recantation. He now saw the state interference was fatal. What had converted him was his experience as a schoolmaster in the Ministry of Education, a armed with insufferable powers to pester, hamper, and interrupt the work of real practical teachers who knew the subjects that they taught, who knew boys, parents, and all the real conditions to their work. It makes no difference to the point of the story whether you agree with his view of the ministry. The important thing is that he held that view. For the real point of the story and of his visit, when he came, nearly took my breath away. Thinking thus he had come to see whether I had any influence which might help him to get a job in the Ministry of Education. Here is the perfect bandwagoner, immediately on the decision. This is a revolting tyranny. Follows the question, how can I, as quickly as possible, cease to be one of the victims and become one of the tyrants? If I had been able to introduce the young men to someone in the ministry, I think we may be sure that his manners to that hated meddlers would have been genial and friendly in the extreme. Thus, someone who had heard his previous invective against the meddling and then witnessed his actual behavior to the meddler might possibly, for charity believes all things, have concluded that this young man was full of the purest Christianity and loved one he thought a sinner, while hating that what he thought his sin. Of course, this is an instance of bandwagon, so crude and unabashed as to be farcical. Not many of us perhaps commit the like, but there are subtler, more social or intellectual forms of bandwagon which might deceive us. Many people have a very strong desire to meet celebrated or important people, including those whom they disapprove, from curiosity or vanity. It gives them something to talk about, or even anyone may produce a book of reminiscences to write about. It is felt to confer distinction if the great, though odious man recognizes you in the street, and where such motives are in play, it is better still to know him quite well, to be intimate with him. It would be delightful if he shouted out, "Hello, Bill," while you were walking down the Strand with an impressionable country cousin. I don't know that the desire itself a very serious defect, but I am inclined to think Christians would be wise to avoid, where he decently can, any meetings with people who are bullies, lascivious, cruel, dishonest, spiteful, and so forth, not because we are too good for them, in a sense because we are not good enough. We are not good enough to cope with all the temptations, nor clever enough to cope with all the problems which an evening spent in such society produces. The temptation is to connive at, by our words, looks, and laughter, to consent. The temptations was never greater than now, when we are all, and very rightly, so afraid of priggery or smugness. And of course, even if we do not seek them out, we shall constantly be in such company, whether we wish it or not. This is the real and unavoidable difficulty. We shall hear vile stories told as funny, not merely licentious stories, to me far more serious and less notice. Stories which the teller could not be telling unless he was betraying someone's confidence. We shall hear infamous detractions of the absent, often disguised as pity or humor. Things we hold sacred will be mocked. Cruelty will be a sly lie. Advocate by us the assumptions that it's only opposite, its sentimentality. The very presumptuous presupposition of any possible good life. All disinterested motives, all heroism, all genuine forgiveness will be not explicitly denied, for the matter could be discussed, but assumed to be phantasmal, idiotic, believed in only by children. It is one to do. What is one to do? For on the one hand, quite certainly, there is a degree of unprotesting participation in such talk which is very bad. We are strengthening the hands of the enemy. We are encouraging him to believe that those Christians, once you get them off their guard around a dinner table, really think and feel exactly as he does. By implication, we are denying our masters, behaving as if we knew not the man. On the other hand, is one to show that, like Queen Victoria, one is not amused, is one to be contentious, interrupting the flow of conversation at every moment with I don't agree, or rise and go away. But by these courses, we may also confirm some of their worst suspicions on those Christians. We are just the sort of ill-mannered prigs, they always said. Silence is a good refuge. People will not notice it nearly so easily as we tend to suppose, and better still, few of us enjoy it as we might be in danger of enjoying more forcible methods. Disagreement can, I think, sometimes be expressed without the appearance of priggery if it is done argumentatively, not dictatorially. Support will often come from some most unlikely member of the party, or from more than one, till we discover that those who were silently dissenting were actually a majority. A discussion of real interest may follow. Of course, the right side may be defeated in it. The manners were very much less than I used to think. The very man who has argued you down will sometimes be found years later to have been influenced by what you said. There comes, of course, a degree of evil against which a protest will have to be made, however little chance it has of success. There are cheery agreements in cynicism or brutally, which one must contract out of ambiguously. If it can't be done without seeming priggish, then priggish we must seem. I'm gonna continue. Sorry, guys. For what really matters is not seeming being a prig. If we sufficiently dislike making the protest, if we are strongly tempted not to, we are unlikely to be priggish in reality. Those who positively enjoy, as they call it, testifying are in a different and more dangerous position. For the mere seeming, well, though, I'm just gonna pause. Okay. For the mere seeming, well, though, it's very bad to be a prig. There are social atmospheres so foul that in them it is almost an alarming symptom. If a man has never been called one, just in the same way, though pedantry is a folly and snobbery a vice, yet there are circles in which only a man indifferent to all accuracy will escape being called a pedant. and others where manners are so coarse, flashy, and shameless that a man, whatever his social position of any natural good taste, will be called a snob. What makes his contact with wicked people so difficult is that to handle the situation successfully requires not merely good intentions, even with humility and courage thrown in. It may call for social and even intellectual talents which God has not given us. It is therefore not self-righteousness, but mere prudence to avoid it when we can. The psalmists were not quite wrong when they described the good man as avoiding the seat of scornful and fearing to consort with the ungodly lust should eat of, shall we say, laugh at, admire, approve, justify, such things as please them, as usual in their attitude with all its dangers. There is a core of very good sense. Lead us not into temptation often means, among other things, deny me those gratifying invitations, those highly interesting contacts, that participation in the brilliant movements of our age, which I often, at such risk, desire. Closely connected with these warnings against that, what I have called connivance, are the protest of a psalter against other sins of the tongue. I think that when I began to read, it then surprised me a little. I had half expected that in a simpler and more violent age, where more evil was done with the knife, the big stick, and the firebrand, less would be done by talk. But in reality, the psalmists mention hardly any kind of evil more often than this one, which most civilized societies share. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter. 5:10. Under his tongue is ungodliness and vanity, or perjury, as Dr. Moffat translates in 10:7. Deceitful lips, 12:3. Lying lips, 31:20. Words full of deceit, 36:3. The whispering of evil men, 41:7. Cruel lies that cut like great razor, 52:3. Talk that sounds smooth as oil and will wound like a sword, 55:22. Pitiless jeering, 102:8. It is all over the Psalter. One almost hears the incessant whispering, tattling, lying, scolding, flattery, and circulation of rumors. No historical readjustments are here required. Where in the world we know, we even detect in the muttering and whittling chorus voices, which are familiar. One of them may be too familiar for recognition. That's the end of chapter 7. Thank you so much for watching. I apologize for my light. I must get a new one. Please, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, share, comment, hit the bell for notifications, follow me on Instagram, and I'll be back next Saturday with chapter 8. Have a good night.